Hey there guys, in today's video I showcase my visit to the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo. So I will show you guys around and tell you what I thought. So if that's something you want to see, you guys want to make sure to stick around because that's going to be coming up right after this. Hey there guys, this is Jack over at Hi Red Bird, where I am tirelessly working to find new ways to make the keeping of exotic animals and pets more exciting, more affordable, and ultimately more enjoyable. Now, one of my favorite things to do as a professional animal caretaker is to go and visit zoos. When I do that, I get to see how other facilities take care of their animals. It can give me ideas to provide different things like food, housing, water, enrichment. Novel ways for my animals to experience and interact with their environment. I can get all sorts of ideas, plus it's just a lot of fun to go across the country and visit different zoos. So in today's video, I was very lucky. I went to go visit some family who had recently moved, and I got a chance to visit the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo. So if that is something you guys want to visit as well, let's go ahead and see what the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo has to offer.
All right, so the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo opens up onto this wide pavilion. Now you can see a couple of the smaller things, the smaller gift shops, the smaller little cafes were going to be closed. We did enter during the winter season, and that actually did end up being a recurring theme around the zoo. But one of my favorite things is this kiosk right here. When you enter the zoo, they give you a token, and at this kiosk, you can choose a conservation project to donate to using that token. We brought my 2-year-old nephew, who absolutely loved the idea of picking which animals to donate the money to. And I think it's really nice that you can showcase to kids in a very easy to understand way that the choices they make can have an impact on actual conservation projects on actual animals. Now, when you get into the zoo, one of the first things we saw was going to be the lions. I can only assume that this rock cave in the outside part of their exhibit is heated, and that's why they were napping there. And then on the other side of that pavilion, we ran right into the elephant barn. So I thought it was really nice that this elephant barn showcases how the keepers are going to work with the elephants. And the guests actually get to see that really well. So there's features, like you can see the keepers doing training sessions with the elephants. You can see the places like the training wall, where they have different openings in the wall where they can work on things like foot care. So this wall right here, you can see the different openings on that. They can work on practicing voluntary injections. Things like that are all going to be really important for elephants, because if an elephant doesn't want to do something, it's not going to. So getting to see how the keepers interact with the animals is nice, and the signage asking guests not to interfere with the keepers is nice as well, because if a keeper is training an elephant, they need to have their attention on the elephant. Now, this room right here was one of my favorites in the entire zoo. This is an indoor enclosure for both koalas and tree kangaroos, and I thought that the entire way the exhibit was done just all fit together really nicely. I liked that mural work. I liked the rock work on the waterfall. The planting is done in such a way that unless you are really looking for it, you can't tell that there is a dividing barrier between the tree kangaroo and the koala. The perching, I thought, was done in a way that when the animals were awake and moving around, at least, that you could see them moving in different ways. Now, neither of those animals are known for being the most ridiculously active, but it still was nice to see. And again, it was 26 degrees outside. We were there in the middle of winter, so having so many interactive things in that building was nice as well. Now, for their Australia section, it did go a little bit downhill because so many aspects were closed. And there were actually a lot of different places where animals were off exhibit. Animals were closed, exhibits were closed, experiences were closed just because we were in winter hours. So here, the kangaroo, wallaby, emu, we were able to see a little bit, but you can see there's that train that you're supposed to be able to drive around and see all of those animals, and that was closed, so we weren't able to do that. This feeding aviary for the budgies was closed. My first thought was they must have pulled the budgies because it's way too cold for them, but you guys can see the budgies are flying around. So we were able to see them, but I think being able to go in with them would have been nice, and because it's okay for the animals to be outside in this, I mean, as long as they can get out of the weather, if they can get out of the wind, if they can warm up when they need to, they can be perfectly okay flying around outside in that weather. It just struck me as a little bit weird that the entire exhibit was closed. I could understand not having the same hours, but having it closed altogether just seemed a bit weird. This path was absolutely horrible, and we didn't realize until the very end that there is a complimentary shuttle that will drive you up this path, because the entire path, it's pretty long. It is going uphill the entire way. It was 26 degrees outside, so me being from the Gulf Coast, my lungs did not do well with that, and I was pretty much ready for death about 3 different times on that trek. But it brought us up to the Primate, Cat, and Aquatics building. And my first thought was, that is a really random combination of animals to all have in one building. But once I warmed up to the point that I wanted to take my coat off, I didn't care about that at all, because it was just nice to see so many different animals in climate-controlled comfort. So here you can see there's different rooms for their gorilla habitat. For anyone thinking that this one enclosure was where all of these gorillas were living, that isn't the case. They were all choosing to be in this room, but there were doors connecting all of the different rooms, and the doors were open. So the gorillas could have gone into any of these different rooms that they wanted to. You can see that door right there. But they were all choosing to be in this room. At this point, they had actually all just woken up from a nap. And getting to see something like a baby gorilla, that's always going to be a draw for a zoo. And you can see there's so many different enrichment items in these enclosures as well. Now, in this building, one thing that you'll see a lot is that mesh background wall. For some exhibits, it's a hallway with exhibits on either side of it. And that hallway is made for the keepers, so obviously guests can't walk through there. But if you're looking into the exhibit, what you see is the exhibit you're looking into. You see that mesh, and then you see the plants in the exhibit on the other side as the background for that exhibit. So I thought it worked really well. Plus, when keepers are going through working with animals, you can see them training the different animals. And that was something we did see quite a bit while we were there. You can see the keepers moving around, working with different animals. With things like the gorillas, they were stationing them or getting the gorillas to move to different places. When you have a group of animals like that, the ability to separate one out if it's sick, if it has to have routine care, is going to be really, really important. So seeing that this was something that they are regularly working on was a really, really nice thing to see at this zoo. There is also a lot of enrichment opportunities that are provided to all of these different animals. You can see there's so many different recyclables, so many toys that are added. You can put in all kinds of different foraging activities for animals that can be really, really easily disguised. You can hide them so they're just a part of the exhibit. But one of the things that is going to be a challenge at a facility like this when it is so cold outside, when these tropical animals aren't even going to have the option to take advantage of their outdoor holding space. You want to make sure that you're giving them plenty to keep them mentally stimulated, to keep them physically active. And you can see with all these different primates, they were all moving around. They were interacting with all of the different enrichment that was provided to them. So they were definitely being well cared for by their keepers, basically taking care of every single aspect of their well-being, not just their physical well-being, but their mental and emotional well-being as well, by giving them so much environmental enrichment, which I thought was a really, really nice thing for guests to see. A lot of times people will think they go to the zoo. If you work at a zoo, that you just feed the animals and then you get to basically pet them and play with them all day. And that is not the case. There is a whole lot of cleaning. And I do have to say that pretty much all of these exhibits, while being a little bit older, it definitely wasn't a building that was built in the last 10 to 15 years. The exhibits were a little bit worn, but they were most definitely clean. So the keepers were working on keeping the exhibits clean. They were working on providing all of this enrichment for the animals. They were working on training the animals, which is not going to be the same as playing with them. And instead, it's going to be working on husbandry behaviors to make the keeping of the animals easier and less stressful on both the keepers and the animals. So getting to see so many different aspects of what goes into animal care, I think, is really, really nice for a lot of guests because they don't realize what happens at a zoo. Now, things like the aquatic section did actually have really, really good water quality for so many different aquatic exhibits, and I thought that was really, really nice. But that entire building doesn't even hold a candle to the Rainforest building. Now, the Rainforest is an add-on to your general zoo admission, so you don't have to go there. But realistically, this was my favorite part of the entire zoo. So starting with finding the entrance to the exhibit, it takes you through this really, really nice conservatory greenhouse of all of these different tropical plants, and it showcases how so many of these plants are used in medicine, what their medicinal use is, the things they can be used to treat. And I just thought that was really, really nice because it helps guests understand that there is a definite connection between the animals that we want to conserve and the environment where they live that we also need to conserve. There are so many things that are critically important that if we lose them, they will have a very noticeable detriment on us, a detrimental effect on how we are able to live our lives. And recognizing this with all of these plants, I thought was really, really cool. Plus, they're really pretty. Now, then it opened up into this aviary section. So there were things like there were scarlet ibis, there were a couple of different turco species, and the capybara that were in here as well. I don't know what it is about them, but capybara just always make me happy. I personally don't know anyone who doesn't have the same reaction. So many different tropical species in this area, and I thought it was just a really, really nice setup. Here we've got some white-faced whistling ducks, one of my favorite species. I love hearing them vocalize. The clouded leopard here was moving around its exhibit. It actually had a piece of enrichment that was in this cave, and it looked like it kept going back to check on that piece of enrichment, and then it would pop back out. And on the other side of that cave, there is actually a viewing window so you could see what the clouded leopard was doing in there. And this rainforest exhibit really did a nice job of having a wide variety of different vantage points so you could see the animals. So here we've got, again, baby primate, absolutely adorable. Mom doing a phenomenal job of making sure that guests can see the baby primate. But you can see here's one viewing window, but if you look lower, there's actually a tunnel that goes through, and you would be able to see these same animals if they were in the lower part of their exhibit. So that part was really, really cool. We also have, again, baby primate, the baby orangutan, absolutely adorable. Again, we brought my nephew here, and he kept having to come back to see the baby orangutan. I think they've already gone back to the zoo at least once because he is in love with the baby orangutan, and it'd be really hard not to. Again, you can see so many different enrichment opportunities here. There's things like the shredded paper that they're able to play with. There's the climbing structures that they're able to play with. That fire hose is used to make that climbing net. To the left side, there's also that piece that could be used for climbing. Food items could be hidden inside the crevices of that. So enrichment that is offered in so many different ways. Such a really, really great way to see the animals interacting with each other. This definitely was one of the favorites for pretty much everyone we saw the entire time we were there. And it doesn't stop there. They also had things like otters. They had a wide variety of different animals in this rainforest exhibit. And again, giving you different vantage points, different ways to see and interact with the animals. And again, this is all in climate controlled comfort as well. So inside here, it was really easy to forget that it was absolutely freezing outside. So even though I was a bit disappointed that we weren't able to see all of the animals, that so many things were shut down because it was winter hours for the zoo, we were able to still see quite a few different things, some really interesting things, and I was ultimately still pretty happy with my visit to the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo. So hopefully this video gave you guys a good look at the zoo. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. I do need to say a special thank you to my patrons on Patreon. By signing up to support this channel, they help me make more tutorials and videos showcasing animal care possible. If you'd like to find out more about subscribing to my Patreon, you can find the link in the description section down below. Thanks so much,